Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Grab a notepad, grab a pen, because I want you to take notes. I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you will jot down some sort of action item that you can implement in your business today, because that's what this is all about, implementation to drive your business forward. I was recently asked to comment on how you can drive value and add value in a nonprofit organization. Now, if you don't run a nonprofit organization, some sort of charitable organization or NGO, then don't feel like you need to tune out just because of that, because I think you'll get something out of this discussion regardless of what kind of business you run or what kind of industry. But I am going to be focusing the conversation on that specific topic because I was requested to do so. So, as we should do always with all questions that we have to tackle in business and in life, is we should take it down to the basics, the fundamentals. Think about first principles, if you will. And when I think about the first principles as it relates to this question, I think, well, where I would start is with the understanding that everyone acts in his own self-interest. So, regardless of whether you are approaching a problem in personal life or in business or for a charitable organization, a nonprofit organization, there is one fundamental truth that I would like to start with, is that everyone acts in his own self-interest. Now, if you will permit me a little detour into theology, and I can appreciate the argument that some may have that they are not doing something in their own self-interest, but rather they want to do the will of God, and they want to cooperate with the graces given to them by God, and to the extent that they're able to do that, they may actually be suffering or sacrificing for the accomplishment of that objective. So I can appreciate that, and if you read about the lives of the saints and everything, we would see that almost without exception, that there is a great deal of suffering, and yet these saints would report that it was very rewarding as well. They felt a level of peace, contentedness, happiness, and love that they had never felt before. So I don't want to split hairs here. That would, I guess, be in their self-interest as well. Even though they are going out of their way to do the will of God and to cooperate with His graces and to conform their will to His, that is still in their best interest. So let's just agree that there is an inclination to gravitate toward doing things in your own self-interest. And if we start there, then the next thing we have to ask is, okay, so what is the product or service that you offer? If you are a non-profit organization, if you're some sort of charitable organization, there's still a product or service. You sort of have to work your way backward there. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the objective? That's another baseline question that you would ask yourself. You combine that with the first question, or the first understanding, the first principle, that people act in their own self-interest, then you would understand that in order to add value for those people, where you might not consider them customers, but you would think of them as donors, for example, volunteers or donors, the stakeholders in a not-for-profit organization, we have to think of analogous to customers. They're acting in their own self-interest, and what do they want? They want your product or service. So do you know how to define your product or service? Do you know how to define your unique selling proposition, your unique value proposition? People want value. So let's think about it. Let's say you had a charitable organization that was involved in raising money to try to fund research towards curing a disease, for example. Well, why would anyone donate to that? Why would you have a donor? Why would somebody volunteer for that organization? They would do so in acting in their own self-interest. And what that may be is they want to feel good inside that they are doing something worthy for a worthy cause. They get a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment of a purpose by contributing either money or time, like they say, time, treasure, and talent toward the not-for-profit organization, and that gives them a feeling of accomplishment and self-satisfaction, that kind of thing. So I would argue that whether you are raising money to assist impoverished peoples, or an educational component to your not-for-profit organization, or you're trying to, as we said before, cure a disease, fund research, maybe you're running a church, a parish, maybe you are funding a missionary method, a missionary expedition, some sort of mission. All of these things, people, the stakeholders involved, have a fundamental need that they're trying to fulfill. And when we in business talk about product or service, we understand that your unique value proposition is the way that you fulfill someone's needs. You solve a problem. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. So if you're running a not-for-profit organization, just like anyone who's running a business, you have to ask yourself, what need am I fulfilling? And you might automatically default to, well, the people that I'm helping, the benefactors of the research, the benefactors in the impoverished communities, those who will be educated, and so on, and the examples. That may be where your default goes. But in order for your organization to be sustainable, you can't just think of those stakeholders. You need to think of the stakeholders who are funding the project. Those are those are analogous to your customers, those donors, and also those volunteers who may be getting involved and helping to operate the logistics of your organization. So think of those stakeholders and what needs, what problems are you solving for them? That's a completely different question than what problems are you solving for the benefactors of your charitable work. And somebody who can afford to donate, and that doesn't really, anyone could give, like in the Bible, the woman who gave the penny, and Jesus said she gave more than anyone, and the disciples commented that she gave only a penny, but he replied that was all she had. That was all she had to live on. She didn't give out of her abundance, she gave out of poverty herself. So I will acknowledge once again that anyone could be a donor regardless, but you still should think about your target market. And I hope you don't object to thinking of it this way if you run a charitable organization, because you do have a target market of donors and volunteers, these stakeholders who will help to sustain your organization. And you probably have a target market that has more expendable income, more disposable income. And what problem are you solving for them? What need are you fulfilling? That's your product or service. You are making them feel good about themselves. Maybe they are able to get a tax donation, a tax deduction, or corporate or personal tax deduction by donating to you. But of course, that's not enough, because any charitable organization, anyone that's runs a registered charity, can provide a tax receipt to the donors. And therefore, that in and of itself will not be enough. Yet you don't want to leave that out. So, get out that piece of paper and start brainstorming these things. What benefits do I give to my donors, to those stakeholders who help me make this operation viable? And one, of course, would be a tax donation. But you got to think of it more like business owners do, in terms of what problem do you solve for them? And it could be that these individuals would like to solve the very problem that you're solving for the first stakeholders we talked about, which are the benefactors. So let's say you're helping an impoverished community in South America or Africa or India or something like that. Your target market in terms of donors may be someone who wishes that they could do that, but you're solving the problem for them of the administration, of getting everything set up and all the logistics, and all they have to do is very conveniently donate to your organization, as opposed to try to find a way to go out and seek those that are most in need of the the resources that you're charitably donating and that kind of stuff. So that's one problem you might be solving. And you can see when I just touched on the idea of convenience, it's no different from you as a operator of a charitable organization, a not-for-profit, an NGO. It's no different from you than any other business that is for profit. Value still has the same four constituents, which is convenience, customer experience, quality, and pricing. So you need to think about those and frame those from a charitable organization point of view. How is it that we are adding convenience? And I gave the example of, well, it may be very convenient for you to be able to donate. Are you making it really easy for people to donate? Can they just go onto your website and get their tax receipt? Can they track their donations over time? Are they recurring donations? If they wish to make recurring donations, are you making it very convenient for them? Do they have to go out of their way constantly to reach out to you to try to give you their money? Or are you making it, really, really simple? So there's the convenience factor. And that's just one example. You need to brainstorm, again, all these four different constituents of value. You have to brainstorm the various ways that you add to that. What is your quote unquote customer, we'll say donor or stakeholder experience, your volunteer experience, your donor experience? How can you improve that? How can you make them feel great? So I think of some charitable organizations that I've had experience with where they would send you an update on what your money's doing. You have to realize there's a great deal of cynicism and skepticism when it comes to donations, and people have a lot of, fear of the waste of resources by big organizations, big charitable organizations. There are, I think, reports that are published annually that talk about the efficiency with which various, well-known at least, the biggest charitable organizations operate, and what percentage of their total donations are going to help the benefactors of their charity versus what percentage is involved in the administration and marketing and that kind of stuff. So that's one thing that people are skeptical about and cynical. So I would, in terms of the customer experience, you're going to want to make people know. You want to make people feel good. You want to let them know if you're very efficiently run, you run very lean, and most of the money that is collected is going to the charitable, those benefactors, then you want to make sure that's well published. Do I have to dig for that information? Do I have to ask for it? Or is it upfront, maybe on my website and whatever marketing channels that I use to communicate? Hopefully they're very cost effective and efficient as well. You're going to need to brainstorm how to communicate a message, a unique value proposition, the same as any other business. People are going to want to hear your story. They're going to want to hear the stories of the benefactors, and that becomes the product. That's what makes them feel good. That's what they get out of this, as one example. So we've talked about customer experience and we've talked about convenience. What about quality? What about the quality of the work you're doing? The quality, is it effective? Are you making a difference? People want to make a difference. If you're going to donate your time, your talent, or your treasure, your money, you want to know that it's making a difference. People have that as one of their four basic needs: to live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. People do want to make a difference, to leave a legacy part. So make sure that you're communicating in some way to your target market, to your donors and your volunteers, that they do make a difference. So tell the story. And again, that's a communication. We call that in business, we call that marketing. You're communicating your vision and your message and the benefits. You're communicating your unique value proposition to those stakeholders. Are you doing that in video? Remember that images, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a video is so much more powerful even than a picture, letting people know, here's the difference your dollar is making. And then people can take that, put that in their heart and feel good about the donations that they're making. It's the quality of work you're doing that matters. And then also the pricing. And I guess that relates back again to the efficiency with which you run, is that if I'm going to donate $1 here or $1,000 here, how much more impact does that make? How much more value do I get for that pricing than over there? So you want to eliminate waste. And again, you have to communicate. This is all becomes, there's two parts. I made a video recently about, it comes down to two things. You have to add value, you have to provide value, and the second thing is you have to communicate that value. If you're doing both of those things effectively, you should do well in both business and operating a not-for-profit organization. I would recommend that you go back and visit the various videos that I've done on all sorts of things as it relates to customers and sales, and then just put the little tweak on it that you need to make it relevant. Just like, you know, there are people who watch these videos who run completely different types of businesses and organizations and vastly different industries. The same thing goes for those who are operating a not-for-profit organization. You have to tweak it and make it relevant and frame it through the lens of what your daily operation and the logistics are. If you're trying to attract community members, parishioners to your congregation, all of these things, you have to frame them. You got to look at it the way a business owner would, through the lens of, this is a customer. There's a basic need from the first principles. What solution am I providing to what problem? Or what problem am I providing a solution for? What needs am I solving? What wants? And remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People have their basic needs that they want to fulfill, like food, water, shelter, sleep, and then they go up from there to the more luxury items. And I think the biggest sources of donations are probably those who have done really well for themselves and have more, as we said, disposable income. That's where you're going to get some really large donations in terms of actual real terms of purchasing power and resources that you can dedicate to benefiting those in your organization and keeping your operation sustainable. Just a word on sustainability. Fundamentally, I like to approach everything from a viability and sustainability point of view, and I'm not talking about environmental sustainability. What I mean to say is, if your operation cannot survive without you, without your time, treasure, and talent, then it's not sustainable. So you have to look at your organization, and when you want to create value for an organization, whether it's profit or not for profit, you want to make sure it's sustainable. And business models become sustainable when they generate profit, because you can reinvest that profit into innovation and growth. Charitable organizations need to look at that as well. What are we doing for sustainability? If all of the money that we collect, all the donations go strictly out to help people, then you have to consider, are you sustainable? What happens if you, as the operator, get hit by the proverbial bus? Is the organization dead, or will it survive you? Have you invested any of the resources from those other stakeholders into being able to run your organization in perpetuity? That's what I really like about business, and that profit incentive. So even if you're not all about profit, you really are all about wanting to help people. You know, many businesses operate that as well. Many business owners get their greatest satisfaction out of knowing they're helping their community, and they're not living lavish, luxurious lifestyles, but they're reinvesting everything back into the business, and people do benefit from that. Remember, in a free market, people don't willingly exchange their dollars for a product or service that doesn't benefit them in some way. So it's very much the same situation with a charity or not-for-profit organization. It needs to be sustainable in some way, and give some consideration to that. Try to manage the way a business would, and think about sustainability beyond just how are you going to spend your donations on benefiting those. And when I say give some thought to it, I would also advise that you go back and visit the videos on that. I've done so many videos and topics about viability and sustainability and management in general. How do you become more effective as a manager if you are very effective? And how are you training? And what succession plan do you have in place? All of these types of things, we have videos to cover this. Maybe start with my top 10 videos that I have, where there's a list that shows you what are the most important concepts you need to understand in management, and that goes for whether you run a for-profit or not-for-profit organization. Start with those and ask yourself, am I being effective as a manager? Because if your organization dies, it's like when you're on the airplane and they say, in the event of the loss of cabin pressure, the mask will drop from the ceiling. Make sure that you put on your own mask first before assisting a loved one, a child, or somebody. Because you're no good to anyone if you pass out. You can't help your child. So you got to make sure you're getting your own airflow first. And the same goes for operating your business and your organization, is that if it can't operate without you, then it's dead. So you might put all this effort into building up something that's really good and helping lots of people, and then you become incapacitated, or you may pass away or something like that, and the organization dries up. It's no longer viable. So you got to think about these things, and it starts with good management principles, which are the same regardless of the type of organization you run. So we can go on and give lots of examples that would be very specific. And in fact, if you want me to do so, if you want me to tackle a more specific part of this, let me know and I will do that. But I'll give you one or two more examples of things that you might focus on. So when you think about sustainability and viability and you're looking at your revenues, do you have a recurring revenue model, some sort of subscription model? So I'm involved with some charities that automatically take funds from my credit card every month. And are you doing that, or are you just expecting one-time donations? The former is obviously preferable because you don't want to have to be going back to your donors time and again. You want them to be getting value in perpetuity, and their donations are in perpetuity, and that they have to take action to stop the donation, as opposed to you constantly coming back with your hat in hand, so to speak, and asking for more money. So consider the recurring revenue model that so many businesses benefit from. This particularly relevant for not-for-profit organizations. And then when I talk about that value equation where they're getting value in perpetuity, you need a good customer relationship management tool. Your donor relationship manager tool, or your parishioner relationship management tool, or your volunteer relationship management tool. You want to continue to build your relationship and be getting messages and communicating value back to people on an ongoing basis. And you can't do that sustainably if you don't have the power of some technology working for you, that you can strategize this, you can formulate strategies in advance, and then you can manage them with so much automation involved so that there's very little work. You can't be running around to each stakeholder yourself personally. I mean, not with any sort of if you run a charitable organization or a business that operates on very few transactions per year, but they're really, really large transactions, then I suppose you could have that sort of relationship where it's face-to-face and you go out of your way constantly to meet with those people and communicate with them and make sure that they understand the value they're getting. But most businesses, and I mean, we don't even want to bother talking about the exception, we've got to manage by the rule. Almost all of you need a good customer relationship management tool, because you've got to manage this, otherwise it'll just get away from you. And with that, you can have a good automated marketing campaign that sends out things like, gives people update on the value and gives them the value that they're looking for, that feel-good moment, that reminder that you're solving a problem for them. You're showing them, look at your hard-earned dollars hard at work through our organization, helping the communities, educating people, whatever it happens to be, spreading the word of God if you're funding a mission or something like that. All these types of things, you need to automate campaigns to go out and communicate that message to your people. So you're going to need to manage that and make sure you have the right software in place and that kind of stuff as well. Now, we will operate and we already deal with not-for-profit organizations, and we have others. And if you run one and you need a little assistance, you can reach out to us, and we will possibly modify how we engage in commerce with you. That is to say, we may be able to give you a pricing break or have some sort of charitable donation from our side to assist you with this as well. And we have all the software and all the tools specifically that you would need to operate any kind of charitable organization as well. But those were some examples I wanted to give you that you got to give some thought to. The biggest organizations in the world, those most successful, typically are the ones who are have the greatest brand. So you got to think of your brand. I think the most successful in terms of volume of donations raised of a charity in Canada, and I believe in the United States as well, is a particular charity. I'm not going to name them, but there's a particular color that's very much associated with this organization. It's part of their branding. And sometimes professional sports teams wear that color, and they have done a great job of marketing. Now, I'm ignorant to the effect that they're having with their donations. That is to say, I'm certainly not an expert, so I can't comment one way or another, but I will tell you, societally, there is no shortage of cynicism as it relates to the curing of a particular big disease. And maybe those that are in the know would say, well, we've made huge progress in terms of survival rates and the treatments and that kind of stuff. And so what I'm really getting at here is that despite the cynicism that people have in general towards a big organization that doesn't seem to have created a cure, they still give. That organization still gets more money than anyone else. It's because they are very well managed and they communicate their marketing message and their brand very, very well. So I would also really look at that. We can continue to go on, but the idea of how to, I guess what I wanted to communicate is the idea of how to add value in a nonprofit organization is no different than it is for a business. Just to recap, you got to start with those first principles, understanding that your stakeholders are acting in their own self-interest. And so find out what that self-interest is. Make sure that you're serving that need. You have to fulfill people's needs, whether they're base needs or more luxury needs. You've got to solve a problem. And then you have to focus on your value, which is your convenience, your customer experience, your quality, and your pricing, and then you got to focus on how you communicate that, your brand and your marketing. That's it in a nutshell. So that's where I want to leave it today. I hope this was useful for you, whether you run a business or a not-for-profit organization. And remember that you can go into the link in the description and we will have a form that you can fill out. When you follow that link, there's a form that you can fill out if you want me to cover a business concept in one of these videos, in a blog topic, and we can make it completely anonymous so that we don't let people know what your organization is, what your business is, what your name is, and I'll tackle a more specific problem for you, because we got some feedback that people don't want to leave things in the comments because it's not anonymous. But to the degree that you don't need to be anonymous, please leave a comment that we can all learn from, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.